Nobody taught you the real rules. Not your parents. Not your school. Not your first job. They gave you the surface version. Save money. Spend less than you earn. Invest early. Good advice. Technically correct. Completely incomplete. Because the people who actually build wealth, the ones who seem to navigate financial crises, inflation, market crashes, and come out ahead, they are not following the same rulebook you were handed. They are playing by a different set of rules entirely. Rules that were never written down. Rules that were never meant to be explained to you. And here is the uncomfortable part. You have already been living inside this system your entire life. You just did not know it had rules. Let me show you what I mean. In 2008, two neighbors lost their jobs on the same week. Same city. Same mortgage payment. Same bank. One lost his house within 8 months. The other did not just survive. He bought 2 more properties at a discount by 2010. Both men had roughly the same income before the crash. The difference was not luck. It was not connections. It was that one of them understood something the other did not. He understood that money is not a thing. It is a language. And if you do not speak it fluently, someone else is always translating for you, and they are not translating in your favor. That is what this video is about. The invisible architecture behind how money actually flows, who it flows toward, and why most people spend their entire lives working hard inside a system they fundamentally misread. Let us start at the beginning, or what most people think is the beginning. You get paid. You spend some. You save some. Maybe you invest a little. That feels like participating in the economy. And it is. But it is the most passive form of participation. You are a passenger. The vehicle is moving. You just have no idea who is driving or where it is going. Here is the first invisible rule. Money does not reward effort. It rewards positioning. Think about that. A surgeon works 12-hour shifts. A software engineer writes code for 4 hours and plays ping-pong the rest of the afternoon. In many cases, the engineer makes more. Not because the work is harder. Because the engineer is positioned inside a system that multiplies output. The surgeon trades time for money. The engineer trades ideas for leverage. This is not cynical. This is structural. The economy is not a moral system. It does not care how hard you worked. It only cares where you are standing when value is created. Now here is where it gets interesting. Most financial advice is designed around the assumption that you are already in the right position. Just save more. Just invest more. Just spend less. As if the game is fair and you are simply not trying hard enough. But consider this. In 1970, the median American home cost about 2.5 times the average annual salary. By 2024, that number is closer to 6 times. The math has changed. The advice has not. A 25-year-old today doing everything right, saving 15% of their income, avoiding debt, maxing their retirement account, is still fighting a steeper uphill battle than their parents did doing everything wrong. This is not a generational complaint. It is arithmetic. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed. The uncomfortable question is, designed for whom? Let us talk about the second invisible rule. Inflation is not a tax on spending. It is a tax on saving. Most people hear the word inflation and think, things are getting more expensive. That is true, but it is the least important part. Here is the real mechanism. When inflation runs at 7% and your savings account pays 1%, you are not breaking even. You are losing 6% of your purchasing power every single year. Silently. Automatically. Without anyone sending you a bill. Meanwhile, someone who borrowed money at a fixed rate to buy an asset, a house, a business, a piece of farmland, they are watching the debt get inflated away while the asset appreciates. The borrower wins. The saver loses. This is not accidental. Central banks know this. Governments know this. Asset owners know this. It is one of the quieter mechanisms for transferring wealth upward. Not through theft. Through architecture. There is a third rule. And this one most people feel but cannot name. Access to information is priced into markets before you ever hear about it. By the time a stock tip reaches a retail investor on social media, institutional traders have already priced it in, extracted their profit, and moved on. The information is not useless. It is just late. And late information in financial markets is often worse than no information at all, because it creates false confidence. This is why people bought Bitcoin at $68,000. Not because they were greedy. Because they were operating on a delay. They were seeing the wave after it had already broken, and they paddled hard toward it anyway. The invisible rule is not that you cannot win. It is that the timeline of information is itself a form of inequality. Now let us zoom out. Because this is where it gets genuinely strange. We live in a moment where the official narrative and the lived experience of money have never been further apart. Unemployment is technically low. Stock markets have been, by historical measures, remarkably resilient. GDP numbers look respectable on paper. And yet 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck as of 2024. Credit card debt in the United States crossed $1.25 trillion for the first time in history. Personal savings rates have collapsed to levels not seen since the months before the 2008 financial crisis. So which story is true? Both of them. That is the point. Macroeconomic indicators are averages. And averages hide distribution. If one person has $10 million and 9 people have nothing, the average net worth in that room is $1 million. Everyone in the room is, on average, a millionaire. That number tells you almost nothing useful. The economy is doing fine. Specific economies, the ones most people actually live in, are under significant and sustained pressure. Understanding the difference between those two statements is itself a form of financial literacy most people never develop. Here is what the people who navigate this well actually do differently. They do not try to beat the system. They try to understand the system well enough to stop being surprised by it. They think in second-order effects. Not what happens if inflation rises, but what happens to real estate, to borrowing costs, to employment, to the sectors they are exposed to, if inflation stays elevated for 3 years. Not one step, 3 steps. They are skeptical of consensus. Not contrarian for the sake of it. Genuinely skeptical. Because they understand that by the time something is consensus, the pricing opportunity has usually passed. And they treat their own financial education as non-negotiable infrastructure. Not a hobby. Not something they will get to eventually. Infrastructure. The same way you would not run a business without accounting, you do not navigate a complex financial life without deliberately building the mental models to understand it. That is not inspiration. That is maintenance. But here is the thought I want to leave you with. Because none of this is a solution. It is a framing. Understanding the invisible rules of money does not automatically give you access to more of it. Knowing that inflation erodes savings does not mean you have assets to park instead. Knowing that information is priced in does not mean you have the capital to act early even when you are early. The rules are real. The game is real. And for a significant portion of people, the constraints are also real. Knowing the architecture of a system you cannot fully opt into is clarifying. But it is also, depending on where you are standing, more than a little bit frustrating. So the question is not simply, how do I play better? The deeper question, the one worth sitting with, is this. If you now understand how the invisible rules work, who benefits from the fact that they were never explained to you? And what does it mean that the most valuable financial education in the world is the kind you have to go looking for yourself? Nobody sends you a letter. Nobody schedules the class. The rules were always there. You just had to figure out there were rules at all.